Katya.
Hey, Joe.
Thanks for coming. I wanted to sit here and talk to you about some of the problems and the challenges that growth companies have. And I know that you spend a lot of time thinking about this. You've had exposure to different industries, companies at different times in their life cycle. And you've come up with this model that we're starting to use quite often, which is called the workaround gap. And I think it's beneficial for all of us if you just explain what it is. Like at a high level, what is it? Why does it exist?
Companies don't build process on an ongoing basis.
Okay.
What really happens is, we come up with a product, we have our first customer, so we do things for the first time to get going.
Yeah.
And without realizing, that becomes our default design. So we go, oh, well, I know how to invoice and I know how to ship. I created a product, and so we're good to go. Mm-hmm. And then as a sales guy, you'll go out and go, well, good, I'm going to go sell more, and I'm going to go sell to new clients, or I'm going to go sell. Product A went well. What about product B, product C? And what we rarely do is go back and look at how we designed it the first time to see if it still fits. We just go, let's go do it again. Yep. Sell more to more customers. But when we go sell to a new customer, that new customer might want new things. And whether it be, volume rebates or different terms, we're programmed as salespeople to, what does the client need? How do I close the deal? And when I close the deal, we ring the bell and we celebrate. And we go, great, but now we got to hurry up and get whatever I just sold out the door. We got to deliver it to the customer.
Right.
And nowhere in any of that process did anyone go back to the teams who have to execute and go, hey, heads up, something new is coming that you need to plan for. And especially in finance, we often find that the team finds out about it when the first invoice has to go out the door and it doesn't work.
Right.
Or when the first payment comes in and someone says, what on earth are these people paying? Or, hey, the customer made 4 deductions on this payment. Why?
Right.
And this is now 90 days after all the things already happened. And so you're starting after the fact. And the workaround gap happens when we have to solve these problems, but we didn't have time to solve them properly. It's quick. The invoice has to get out the door tomorrow. The products have to get set up. The customer needs the check. The vendor needs the check. And then everything is done with urgency. So you do a quick workaround to make it happen. Mm-hmm. And these just build over time. And every time we do something new, we're adding in a new process. Because rarely do we sell to every customer in the exact same way. Rarely is each product created the same way, distributed the same way. And some of those things work with the old processes, and some are actually completely new, but we don't plan for them, we react.
Interesting. So you're saying it's the fault of sales?
Everything is the
Everything
fault
is
of
the fault of
sales.
sales. We
Absolutely.
have it on camera.
Yes.
So this isn't just, it sounds as though this isn't just limited to finance, but for the purpose of this talk, the workaround gap we're going to speak about is within the finance team, within their capabilities. And it arises because what sounds like customizations designed to get things done become stacked on top of one another. Each new client may need things subtly different, and that subtlety creates a new process or a new workaround, and they just keep growing. Am I right or wrong? And correct me if I'm wrong.
I think that's part of it. I think the root cause, in fact, is much simpler in that organizations are organized functionally, right? Because it's much easier to manage.
Right.
When I'm talking about sales stuff, I'm going to talk to sales, and I might include marketing if we remember. But that was for the marketing guy.
Go marketing.
Go marketing. If I know it's going to impact the warehouse, I'll probably include the ops team. But I don't think all the way end to end.
Okay.
And our processes really run order to cash. But it's very hard to realize every person who might be impacted on a team. And so we don't, unless we're set up to periodically sync in with a full customer team that might include representatives from other teams to go, hey guys, you just made a change that's going to impact us downstream, let us go investigate. So the best practices I've seen are where we actually have cross-functional teams who get together on a regular basis and communicate, because it's not practical to have someone from finance, or engineering or IT or a bunch of, or HR in every single meeting all the time. But what we do need are more cross-functional, sort of communication meetings and collaborations where we share relevant information back and forth. And then if those teams know something's coming, they can plan for it.
Right.
They can also go back to sales and go, hey, this new program you've set up is only 2% different from the other 4 programs we already have. Could we just standardize amongst, this standard program that we could then set up and be ready to go with all our clients instead of having, 100 different flavors of ice cream that are all basically the same thing.
So this is interesting because as I listen to the way you're describing it, this sounds like it would arise in almost any company, but it seems like it can be acute inside of growth companies. Like it feels like this is something that a rapidly growing company would have more of. Why?
Well, definitely just pace of change and speed. Rapidly growing, you're going to be looking for opportunities. So for example, new sale to the US. Oh, exciting. Well, if you don't have someone on your team who's looking out for what that can mean, and fast-growing companies tend to invest on the front end first. No one wakes up and says, hey, I'm going to build my finance function first and I'll bring in sales later. Doesn't necessarily make sense. However, that first sale in the US, an experienced finance person knows immediately that you're talking serious tax consequences, multi-jurisdiction, state tax, US tax, cross-border tax. And you can create yourself some very, very serious issues if you don't tackle those with intent. But if you don't have a resource at the table who's had experience with that, you're not even going to see the risk coming. And that's where fast growth can get in trouble, is you are often going to pick a jack of all trades who can get you, cover the most of the bases. But some of those jack of all trades folks don't have the experience in the areas you're going into.
So when you're speaking right now and you're identifying all these things that can unfold, you gave us a solution earlier in the conversation. I thought it was interesting. It was addressing this from communication and having the right people at the table at the right moment in time. For that to happen inside of a company that's growing quickly, it takes an awareness of the individuals that are leading to say, okay, this is one of those moments. Is there a way that if we're giving advice to anyone that's in a fast growing company, like what are those moments? Is it when you're launching a new product? Is it when, like each instance, new product, new geography, that people can sit there and say, okay, I should consult with finance? Because that quick checklist could probably help a lot of our clients.
I definitely think when you're, the ones you just mentioned are absolutely there. I would encourage leaders to think about their blind spots.
Okay.
There are certain things as leaders, you are good, obviously, at a lot of things. That's why you're leading. So if you know you're great in the product space, but not so much on operations, or a lot of leaders are not comfortable in the finance space. Okay. So instead of avoiding the thing you're not comfortable with, at least get yourself some advisory capacity. So whether it's someone to sit on your board, someone to mentor you and coach you, someone to come and have conversations with, because you need someone to go, have you thought about X?
Yeah.
Here's what can happen if you don't think about it. And when you're in a fast-growing company, you're already drinking from the fire hose, solving the 10 problems you know about. It's easy to forget about the 3 you haven't tripped over yet. But it's really important because some of those areas can really tank the value of your business if you don't get ahead of them.
So if I look at any individual, and for anyone that's watching this right now, the idea is you or I or Katya have a set of competencies that come with our background and our experience. We should know the limitations of those things, and we can think about, as a next step, how might you close those gaps? Who do you go to for advice that would have a different skill set? I think a big thing is knowing when to bring something and when not to. So you might start by bringing more things as you're calibrating, is this critical or not? But I'm going to come back and I ask the question again, which is those 2 pieces that we just talked about, maybe a new product, a new geography. Any other instances that you can think of that would be, you would add to that checklist?
New customers.
New customers.
Because not all customers are the same.
Right.
So some customers believe in dead net invoicing and keeping it simple, and they're very easy to serve. Bless those customers because they're very easy on systems and process.
Right.
Other customers are very complex to serve, and they want all kinds of special programs, rebates, returns. The way they do business is complex.
Yep.
And they are now your customers. You have to serve them.
Yes.
So especially if you're taking on a large new customer, you need to do the research on that customer and understand how they differ from your other customers, because your processes will now need to change. And if you don't do that due diligence, you're going to find out the hard way.
Yes.
Because you're assuming that, I've had people just go, well, won't the customer just send me a check for the invoice the way I send it? And I try not to laugh out loud, because like large customers are like, really? I'm going to do what I want to do. So I'm going to deduct for all the things I disagree with. And sometimes I'm going to deduct from your bill just because, in fact, that's how I make money. I deduct for 1% of returns whether you didn't deliver the product or not.
Yeah.
And you have to learn and understand that. I think, again, having people on your teams or advisors who have been down the road you're going down, who are further down the path and can go, this is normal or this is not normal, and here's how you deal with that. So you need people who have the experience of where you're going to help give you some guidance on the pitfalls.
This is fascinating. I feel like each of these could be a session where we talk about a customer. Therapy? This is therapy. This is founder growth company therapy that we're dealing with right now.
Yeah.
So those are excellent examples. A new product, a new geography, a new customer or customer segment. And that's not just size, that can be complexity. And it may not be the largest client that causes the most grief when they're looking for customizations.
Sometimes it's the combination as well, because sometimes I've seen you can handle one change at a time, but markets can also then layer on, the exchange rate changes dramatically. So what wasn't a problem 2 years ago suddenly becomes a problem, and you didn't have a plan for it. So if you're buying and selling in different currencies, you need to think about that in advance.
Yes.
And sometimes just the sheer complexity. Sometimes it can be something simple, but if you've had 10 different changes in a row, that can impact your team's abilities to change and keep up. The first 5 maybe weren't a problem. Things like Excel hell don't start to show up until you've had layer upon layer upon layer. It's no one change that impacts you. And what I've seen is businesses start to assume that the team can do it just because they've done it 10 times before. But they're doing it in a workaround capacity, and they start to become stressed and overwhelmed because what you think is a default process to them, is like climbing a mountain.
Right.
Every quarter end, and you say, hey, let's refresh the forecast, and the team behind the scenes, finance teams are sometimes too keen and too willing to serve, and in fact kill themselves with human effort and workarounds to deliver what the executives are looking for. And then people don't realize how much work and effort and strain just the ability to forecast all those complex things that aren't standardized can put on the team.
This is excellent. I see the definition of the workaround gap is incredibly helpful. I see the description of how it develops within companies as something that people can benefit from. And the signals or the events that'll compound it and make it worse, those are things that people probably would like to know more about. I want to get to we talked about this a little bit, but the prevention side. That's like a little bit of design level thinking around what business are you in and how are you going to address this. How can we get ahead of this? Like, how do we prevent it by thinking differently when we're starting companies or when we're really starting to grow our companies into different geographies, into different products? Like, what would you recommend I do to take a step back and look at our business and say, these are some things I should examine, and how do I do that?
I think it's thinking about each activity and go, can this scale?
Okay.
Each time we what does success look like? So, okay, I just want to go land this client, because so often our goal is just more revenue, more profit, and hey, if I've got too much of any one of those things, I'll worry about it later, or I'll hire more people. Whereas, serving a very difficult client, if you go, okay, well, if I've got 20 of these, how am I going to do this?
Yeah.
So I'm either going to get really good at servicing, or I'm going to decide what I'm going to say no to. So I think being very clear on our strategy. What am I selling and to whom? What's my value proposition? And then designing processes that serve that. Ideally, you want an efficient, scalable process. It just takes a lot of real clear thinking.
Yes.
And having all the different cross-functional teams in the room to go, this is what we want to go to the market and serve. Can everyone support this? So that if what we're proposing is really, really hard on a certain team, that doesn't mean you don't do it. But you go in with eyes wide open that says, well, in fact, that's critical to the value we want to deliver. So we're going to resource that team because we actually want to spend that money there. Versus, oh, that's not value add. We don't want to do that at all. There's some business we should say no to because it's not profitable and it's incredibly difficult to execute, but we don't track it and measure it, and so we just don't know.
This has been a great discussion. I think one thing that we didn't touch on that we should have, and this will help everyone as they're assessing their own organization, their own capabilities, the choices that they've made. Let's close out with some symptoms. Like you're experiencing workaround hell, and the workaround gap is growing when you're feeling like this and you're seeing these things. What are those things?
Everything takes a long time.
Okay.
So if you go to your team and you go, oh, can I get a new forecast? Can I get a new product design? Can I get a new anything? And to you, it's just a slight change of a previous one. And the team goes, oh my God, that's going to take a week. I have to re-pull 7 different sources of data and compile it and revisit it. So when things can't be done quickly, that tells you don't have automated systems. You don't have templates that you can pull upon, standardized process, and clear thinking. And if teams have end-to-end collaboration well set up, they can quickly reach into other teams and get what they need.
Okay.
When everything is taking a long time, when there are a lot of errors, when you get information and it's incomplete, all of those are symptoms that it's very hard to get information out of your organization. So I think that would be a sign. And employee stress. Employee stress, turnover, when all of your work products depend on the superheroes, people coming in to save the day, putting in lots of hours and reworking, that tells you have a lot of manual processes. Those are all things that are not scalable and therefore put you at risk.
Awesome. Thank you.
There you go. Thank you.